Today, we're diving into an essential skill for us, which is graphing data. As educators, we collect a great deal of data. However, raw numbers and tallies alone don't tell us much unless they're organized and visualized effectively. And that's where graphs come in. So, by the end of today in this unit, you should be able to number one, understand why graphing data is critical. Two, identify the different types of graph that we use in behavior analysis. And three, apply basic graphic conventions when plotting behavioral data. Let's start with the fundamental question. Why do we use graphs when we're talking about behavior? Graphs serve three essential purposes. One, it helps us organize our data. Instead of flipping through multiple sheets of raw data, graphs consolidate information in a clear visual format. For example, if I'm tracking a student's out-of-seat behavior over time, I will be able to immediately see patterns in the data when it's graphed. Number two, monitoring progress. This is both formative and summative evaluation. With formative evaluation, we have ongoing data collection that allows us to adjust interventions in real time if they're not effective. With summative evaluations, at the end of an intervention, we can assess its overall success. For example, if a reading intervention is not showing progress, modifications can be made based on the graph. And three, a communications tool. Graphs make it easier for teachers, parents, and other specialists to understand student progress without needing to interpret raw data. For example, at an IEP meeting, when I've got a teacher presenting a graph showing the student's increased compliance over time, it's easy for everyone to understand. The most commonly used type of graph in ABA is the simple line graph. This presents data over time. A line graph consists of two axes. The x-axis, or the abscissa, this represents time, like sessions, days, or weeks, and the y-axis, called the ordinate. This represents the behavior that's being measured. It could be the number of responses, the percentage of correct answers, etc. There are key elements of a line graph. There's the axes labels. These clearly indicate the time period and the measured behavior. The data points, these represent the occurrences of behavior during each session. A data path, this is a line connecting data points to show trends over time. And condition change lines, these are vertical dashed lines indicating intervention phases like baseline versus treatment. And finally, there's participant identification. This is the student's name and target behavior clearly labeled. For example, let's say we're tracking Sean's callouts in class. The x-axis shows my daily classroom sessions. My y-axis records the number of callouts per day, and over time, you can see a trend. Do you see the behavior increasing, decreasing, or remaining stable? Although line graphs are the most common, there are other graphs that can be useful in behavior analysis, like cumulative graphs and bar graphs, but we tend not to use those quite as often. You can look in your text to get some examples of what those look like and when it would be a good time to use them. Now let's discuss a couple of different types of data that can be plotted on a graph. There are different types of data that can be plotted onto the graph. First, we have event recording data. This is when we plot the number of occurrences or percentage correct. For example, I can count how many times a student calls out without raising their hand. I can also plot rate data. This is a fluency measure. It uses frequency divided by time, so we get something like number of correct responses per minute. We can also record interval and time sampling data. This reports the percent of intervals during which a behavior occurred. For example, I can track if a student was on task during 15-second intervals. Then I can have duration data. This is when I graph how long a behavior lasts, like how much time a student spends engaged in a writing task, and also latency data. This graphs the time delay before a behavior occurs. For example, I can record how long it takes a student to begin an assignment after being given instructions. Just to review, graphs help us organize data, monitor interventions, and communicate progress. The simple line graph is the most common tool, but cumulative graphs or bar graphs can be useful in specific circumstances. Data must be carefully transferred to the correct graph format based on the type of measurement used. That's it for today. Have a great day.